Hello, welcome to round 2 of the Crazyhouse World Championship. We have a match here between xuanet and recrec. So xuanet is black in the first game. I'm just going to step back to the beginning. There's a little bit of a delay, but it'll give us a bit of time to catch up to the players as we go through the game. d4, d5, knight c3, bishop f5. Nothing fancy so far, challenging both bishops. Kind of symmetrical. Castle, castle. No exchanges yet, but we're about to see the first one. Exchange of the light square bishop. And the dark square bishops. Bishop at h6, very safe. Bishop at g3, knight f5, bishop at f5. Bit of a target you can see here on c7. xuanet defends, take, and bishop at c7. d6 is covered twice for the moment, queen e7. This is a knight sack to open up the bishop here, so it's 2 pawns for a piece. Queen e6 and knight c7, queen d7. I think we're almost up to the live action. Take. So what do we have? A rook and 2 pawns for 2 pieces. Rook at c7 was the last move played. And about a minute 40, minute 50 each left. So black to play. So these 2 bishops connected here keep the white king very safe. Looks like the only way in for xuanet. And he's normally an attacking player. He won't like this sort of position too much. Hello, Katask and Chuck, welcome. I think recrec has chosen a good opening here, d4, d5. Not quite xuanet's cup of tea. He's wiped out the queen side. Does he have enough material though? I mean, you can see the big stack in xuanet's hand. 5 minor pieces in hand. Knight at f5. Bishop and 3 pawns can't do much. He needs to clear the square b7 and start dropping pawns on the 7th rank, I think. But he's got to be careful. There's no sudden counterattack. So this is game number 1. If you have just joined, a little bit of a delay. Pawn at f4, what's the point? He's trying to build a base on the dark squares, bishop at g5 perhaps. But here comes xuanet. He might have to switch plans and go bishop at h3. Otherwise I think bishop at f3, threat is too strong. Or check first, perhaps even better. Because now he can immediately go bishop at f3, no? He wants to take the bishop first and be safe. Alright, it looks like xuanet's about to take this game. I can't see any chance that white has to defend. g2, just too vulnerable. Bishop at h3, perhaps. Take first. Yeah, the rook looks nice on b7, collecting a couple of pawns, but there was no time for white to clear the rook out of the way and start dropping the pawns everywhere. So it should be a win to black, it's just a matter of time. White resigns. Okay, let's see what xuanet has with the white pieces. So best of 10, first game goes to xuanet. I had a game earlier today against recrec with the black pieces. Wasn't the highest quality game. I think he missed a few chances at the end. But it was another d4, d5. And probably we're going to see a few of those today. So what's this unusual French with queen takes d5, knight c3, bishop b4. Trying to leave the queen in the center as long as possible. I think Crazy Ara did something like this against me and destroyed me in about 14 moves. So often you see black dropping a pawn on g4 or e4 and white just leaving it there and taking back with the bishop because white is so safe. But let's see if xuanet wants to defend all the material. Thanks for the follow, Miss Fairy Queen. Queen e1. So it's a typical way to defend. Probably just ignore this and go hunting the knight pawn at g4. I guess it's possible to play something like knight at a4 if you want to go that way. So knight at g5, a bit unexpected. Possibly, I don't know what quite to expect here. I don't really want to trade here and allow this diagonal to be open. I want to find some way to drop a knight on f4 and hunt down the queen, but if I trade too early, just opening myself up to tactics with a possible knight at h3 check, assuming I want to play bishop f3. What else is xuanet considering? Can he just leave this trade here and attack something? Bishop at c4 or pawn at d3? I was thinking just ignore that and go pawn at h3. I think black has to try to attack quickly with the queen in the center, otherwise he'll be too many tempi behind. But this is interesting, this queen sack and knight at e2 coming. I could even leave this there, and I was thinking even pawn at h3 instead of pawn at g2. So material count looks like it's back to equal. xuanet just covering some squares around the king. Queen at g3 threatening queen takes g7. Let's see what this knight on c3 can do. Not much it seems, so going for the attack, yeah, why not? I assume the bishop is going to move with some sort of a threat. But there will be taken bishop at e2 threatening. Bishop takes f1 with check. And of course the important thing is everything comes with check. So this seems to indicate that xuanet needs to defend. And even a move like bishop a3, although it saves one tempo, he'll have to find a way to avoid bishop at e2 unless he has some sneaky threat with knight at f6. No? Oh no, I was expecting bishop at e2. But a safer approach instead, rook at g6. Okay, blocking off the g file. I like black's chances here. Still like the look of bishop at e2. Not quite sure how else to attack. I guess there's knight takes d4, it's a bit slow. So would white simply move the rook here? Rook g1. Okay, so this is something, threatening bishop takes f3. So you notice how black still is keeping the queen off the board until the right time. So I like the way black has played this. And I'm not sure whether xuanet should have taken the bait and gone queen takes c3 when the offer was on the board. Knight at h4. So the key square seems to be f3. I don't think he really wants to take the rook. Again, unless there's some decisive threats. Well, there is rook at e7 and queen takes c7 to watch out for. And I'm not sure if there's a mate with queen takes f3 and then knight takes f3 and then rook at e7, king d8 seems to be safe. Alright, but both players seem to be focused more on defense at the moment. Is this a real threat? Queen takes h4. Queen takes, bishop takes f3 check. King, where does it go? King h3, then there's knight at f4. And then the other knight's coming back to e2. Alright, so queen takes h4 does seem like a real threat to me. Again, do you just fortify the square f3? Or perhaps even drop the king back to h1 so there's a blocker on g2. Alright, he's gone all in for the attack. Threatening knight at d6 check. This is going to be an exciting finish. I still can't quite tell what's happening. Queen takes g4. How to defend f3. This is a problem. This is the drawback of queen takes c7. So just pawn at g2 is made in 2. I mean, queen g1, yeah. I can also be fancy and do it this way and then pawn at g2. White resigns. Okay, very well played from recrec. So we have 2 wins with the black pieces so far. Always good to see some wins with black. We have, what do you call this, a John Lee perk with knight c6 early. Oh, actually, it's not really a perk unless you play e4. So this setup tends to work well when white plays more defensively with e3 and bishop f4, bishop g3. Especially when the bishop comes back here because there's no pressure on h6. So not going for the rook. Interesting. Is he just going to take and go knight takes d4? I think I would do that without thinking too much. So 3 pawns in hand. Black really needs to get rid of this knight here. He's trying to block out the queen. But I think the most important piece to get rid of is this knight here because it's the one guarding the knight checks and the square g2 in particular. You can see white's trying to defend this diagonal backwards. So black's king looks fairly safe. It's just a matter of exchanging off some of the key pieces. I think black is doing quite well here. Alright, so perhaps he's trying to exchange this with a knight check, a knight at e2 check. c6 seems a bit slow because the bishop will sack, the knight has to come back to take it. So I can't see what's wrong with knight at e2 check. Taking looks bad, I think. Well, actually anything looks bad if king h1 just takes here. Pawn at g2, pawn at h3, and we end up with a similar position in game 1. The finish of game 1 is very similar. So knight at f4 is going to win for xuanet very comfortably. Queen at h4 mate. Okay, it's made in 2 instead. Hey PKR. It was a nice game. So the trend continues. Black wins all the games so far. 2-1 to xuanet. Alright, this is very unusual. Queen e5 check. I much prefer recrec's opening in game number 1. Because after knight takes, he's only got 1 piece for the queen. This is not enough. There's no way this is ever enough. Well, if he takes, he's inviting the queen out, and there's a weakness on b7 and also f7. Big hole on c8, as you can see, already resigns. Alright, that's a disaster from recrec. I don't know why he didn't stick to his opening. It went quite well. The French a bit more aggressive this time from xuanet, playing early bishop b4. So take bishop at g6 counteracts any knight at h5 kind of business. Just gains a little bit of time on the queen. Not quite sure what to expect. Queen g3. Oh no, he wants to guard c2. Or there was queen takes g7. But it's actually black that would like some trades here. So the idea to either pile up on c3 or just to take again and find some square for the knight to harass the queen, attack b2. So the key defender here is the bishop on h3. It's assuming white's going to castle kingside. Sneaky threat of queen takes h3. I wonder if he's going to do it anyway if castles. There's an idea to take on h3 and then on c3, then there's a knight at f3 check. But just doing it the slow way without any sacks so far. Needless without any needless sacks. What do we have here? Bit of weakness on h2. You can get out of that by castling, but this pawn at a3 looks deadly. So keeping the king in the center. The rook is defended already, so no need to move it. Just hunting the bishop, perhaps just pawn it. Pawn at g4 probably just loses a pawn. Maybe buys a bit of time to hunt down the queen, but bishop at f3 is safe, but black is already, what, 2 pawns ahead? King is looking pretty safe. I guess the rook can come back to the h-file, but that's really the only attacking piece at the moment. And there was a target on c6, I just noticed. So it seems to be the only weakness, the pawn on c6, but xuanet's gone into attack mode. He doesn't mind a queen trade because then he can grab f3 and then there's weaknesses everywhere. Pawn at d2 check looks obvious. But just notice the bishop does cover h3 backwards. Maybe we're going to see a rook sack and then find some way to use the knights in hand. Knight at c1 check, take. Is it enough? Some fancy rook drop on e4, blocker, bishop blocker. Don't know whether he's going to do it all the check. Perhaps a fancy move like knight at c1 instead. There we go, knight at c1. If take, there's going to be some promotion, and this is just a mate in 2 with bishop at h3 check. Yeah, so knight at c1 was very strong. I'm not sure if there was any good defense, because this sort of interference move means there's always a promotion threat, and there's queen drops on the first rank also to watch out for. So 3-1 to xuanet. And let's see. A different opening this time, g3. We have an English with c4. Very unusual. So no trade so far. Black would really like a pawn for h3, but if he ever gets a pawn, yeah, white can always just defend like this. I suppose h6, just trade off the bishop. Bring the queen down to d7 to put some pressure here on h3. Sometimes black can play completely different in a different way and target the dark squares by trying to set up some knight h5. But h6 I would have played to stop all this stuff, because now you don't want to play h6. It's a bit too late to allow the bishop sack and then the queen's coming in. So I wonder if his idea is to play knight h5. Okay, rook g8 is quite okay. I'm quite okay with this. Still not entirely sure who trades benefit. I guess xuanet wants to sack here and pick up 2 pawns, but it should be defensible for black. He can either move the rook and then hold a heavy piece if pawn at g7, or he could have even played bishop at f8 and taken back. PKR is asking, was an early bishop takes g2 check any good? Bishop takes g2 check. Do you mean bishop takes f2 check? It's a good question. Sometimes it works with the white pieces, although black is a tempo behind. Unless white has wasted time. I mean, he's played the move c4, which doesn't often happen with the reverse colors. So yeah, sometimes it is worth it if you can follow up with knight g4 check and then the king is awkwardly placed. Sometimes. I think you'd want to be pushing forward in the center a bit earlier than recrec did in the game, though. It doesn't work so well when your pawns are on d6. and e5 instead. Oops. So I've kind of lost what's happened. Yeah, and entire sleeve is also making the point, if you're much higher rated, you can get away with offbeat openings. I did something similar in my round 1 match. It's on YouTube if you want to look at some offbeat openings, which I don't usually do in a serious match. But someone made the comment that Oppo didn't know my preparation because I was doing trolling openings. Oh yeah, but this is an easy mate here with knight takes f7. So, not quite sure how that happened so suddenly. But sometimes all it takes is 2 secure pieces like a knight on h5 and a pawn on f6, and it just means that you can afford to do as many trades as you want, and then any trade is going to benefit you, especially diagonals and heavy pieces. With the rook on g6, it's very unlikely that he was going to hold it for the rest of the game. So this time xuanet doing a, what do you call this? A double fianchetto. He's got 2 light square bishops on the long diagonal, interfering, but he wants to take back, actually he wants to keep the knight for c3. It's a good idea to, actually this is a nice move, knight at b5. Now he's got 3 pieces, watch out for this long diagonal. So I think he wants to play knight c3 take here and then go bishop takes f3. This is, I think xuanet's playing this a little bit too quickly because he's given recrec way too much material as well. Now what is a material count? It's just a whole queen for a pawn. You can just build up slowly with pawn at e5 or bishop, yeah, bishop h4 is okay. Pawn at e5. It's also a good move, pawn at h6, just to undermine the defense here. So I'm not sure, did xuanet just miss the fork on c7, or? Because I think it went a bit fast, but at one moment he allowed it intentionally, but I think he might have forgotten about it on the next turn. Because I could tell he was trying to set up some sneaky knight c3 and give away the queen and then take here and blast open the g file and the square h3. So I haven't really paid too much attention to the last few moves, but it seems like white's gonna have a big advantage regardless. So he's doing a good job blocking out the g file, that's for sure. I don't imagine xuanet wants to give away his knight on f6 as well, so knight e4, pawn at f6. But then if king back, pawn further down to f7. I wonder what the best chance for survival is. There's a knight at e8 check, yeah, same thing, knight at h5. Perhaps even better because then there's a knight takes g7. What is this? He's going to escape over to c6. So does black have any counterattack? What if I just go queen a4 or something? Is there any actual counterattack? Rook takes g2. You just take everything? I don't think there's a real counterattack. I mean, sometimes when you're playing a match, you do get afraid of ghosts. So there could have been a fancy move like bishop b5 or queen a4 to try and cut off the king. But you can also just pick off the free rook, of course, at any time. Alright, let's see this 500 rating points difference to see if it makes a difference when you're a queen and a rook down. Of course, in games like Bughouse and Crazyhouse, that really means you're 2 queens and 2 rooks down. With the dream setup for a d4 player, bishop on e2, knight on f3, no weaknesses around the king. So white has a time advantage. Not that the time is very relevant here, because when xuanet blundered, he was up to a 3 minutes and 12 seconds. So what is white thinking about? The most clinical way to finish off the game? I probably would have just traded off a pawn. What else? I mean, if black has a few moves in a row and he's allowed to build up 3 bishops on the diagonal, then, well, practical chances, but still, it really should not amount to anything. Alright, so we're eventually going to see some bishop at a6 at the right time, but I mean, you don't have to be worried about your queen. I would just find a way to blast open this little fortress here. What about just knight takes e6, followed by pawn at b5? Yeah, you really don't need to preserve the queen. There's no need to worry at all. Pawn at b5, surely? Yeah, just take the bishop. Alright, I think I can safely call this one as a win for recrec. And be a brave man to bet against recrec here. So it is do or die. I mean, in this match it's still a double elimination. This is still the winner's bracket. But the scoreline being 5-1. Recrec needs to win 4 in a row to take it to tie breaks. Yeah, you'd love a knight for c8. It's probably not going to happen, so yeah, just put some bishops on the board, build up on the light squares. No need to hurry. If you want to be fancy, you could sack a rook here and then go pawn at c7. No need for such outrageous nonsense. Bishop's going to come back, I guess. Yeah, I'm not sure whether the word fortress is in xuanet's vocabulary. But this is very rare to see him defending like this. Alright, he's not after the queen, he's just defending the square b6. So are we going to see queen takes d7? I guess no need. Again, no need to be fancy. Rook takes. What's the plan? Just rook takes a6. Pawn at c7 looks good. Yeah, well, anything looks good. Queen takes d3 first. So it's a bit painful to watch. Oh, there's a5 coming too. All the channels are opening. There's now a knight at b5 check possible. Alright, I think he's going to play on to mate. Knight takes d6 check. And even if the queen wasn't guarding h3, there's still no chance of a counterattack with infinite pieces, because you can always sidestep with king h1. Alright, 5 games to 2. We see now a switch of openings from recrec. So bishop g4 early, a little bit unusual. Oh, that looks a touch risky because of queen b5 check. Knight c6, probably just take on b7. Or was there a knight b4? Not sure. Oh, hang on, how did he allow this? Oh, what, you can't do this? No, bishop at e6. Ah, knight g5. No, you gotta make some space. I mean, every Bughouse player would know this as well. When you have your knight d7, that's just the worst thing. There's a big hole on e6. You have to move the e pawn. That's a bit of a shame. So, about move 6. Yeah, so I think knight bd7 at the moment is kind of okay, but actually no, I wouldn't play knight bd7. You just play e6 now. Yeah, it's reasonably playable. Then you can answer e5 with knight d5. There's no such worries. Well, actually, my biggest concern is still queen b5 check. So 6 games to 2. Is that going to be the final score? Ah, they're playing maybe 2 more for the crowd. So going back to d4. So GG, xuanet is through to the 3rd round. Let's just quickly check out before the game progresses too far. His opponent, where is he on the bracket? I know I can use Control F. There we go. He's right down the bottom in Legion Destroyer's quarter. Is this a quarter or an eighth? I think it's an eighth. That'll be the round. Oh, this whole thing is. It's only a quarter final once you get to this stage. But the next match will be xuanet versus the winner of Pawn in Training and Legion Destroyer, which is, I believe, on Monday morning Sydney time, about 6 AM. Alright, so let's come back to the game. Where are we? Just gonna jump back. It's reminiscent of game number 1. Very similar, where the bishops are facing off against each other. We don't see a trade yet. Both bishops. Bishop at h6 I think was played in game 1. So new move bishop at c5 this time. And from memory, recrec waited till a piece appeared on d6, traded it off, and then went bishop at c7. Seemed to turn out okay, but then he lost too many minor pieces. I think sacking 1 like he did in game 1 was okay, but I think he went a little bit sack crazy, going for too many pawns, and he left nobody defending the king. So what do we have here? Bishop sack on h7. And what was that he took on c? Oh, that was a bishop. So he's recovered his material, which would immediately indicate that white is doing quite okay, because white is the one attacking, probing holes. So once he takes on f7, then he would like a knight in hand for g6. So that's why xuanet is covering. You probably put a bishop on, or do you save the queen? I'm not quite sure. Yeah, I'm still hesitating because he doesn't have a knight for g6. That seems to be the key piece. He's relying on the rook on the back rank working, but because of the decisive threat of knight at h3, rook at g8 will just be answered by king takes h7, and yeah, it's too slow to take the queen. So rook at e8 check seems to be the only move, but then you could just take it twice, and again there's no knight for f7. So the knight was the key piece. So I don't think the sack on h5 is worthwhile. because even though he forced a rook, there wasn't enough time to do everything that he wanted to do. So yeah, I mean, of course he wants to put a pawn on f7 and then go queen at g8 mate, but he has to defend the square h3 first, which means bishop at h4 or queen somewhere. But now there's knight at f3 check and wins the queen. Yeah, it's a bit sad for recrec. I thought he was doing quite well before he sacked the queen in an untimely fashion. Perhaps just put the bishop on e2 and then decide what to do with the queen, or whether to play a move like f3 and block it out. Perhaps he could put the bishop on and block a few times and bring the queen to a better square. So what do we have here? A kind of French with an early bishop b4. Alright, I'm surprised xuanet didn't go for queen g4. I think it's a good opening for white. So taking with the knight is usually not what you want to do, because there'll be some knight at h5. It's very awkward to defend the square g7. Queen g5. I see this sometimes in Bughouse. Does look like a reasonable defense. What happens on queen g2? Rook f1. Hang on. Now I'm thinking this looks good for black. How did this happen? So both players will have to calculate what happens if knight at f3, queen takes, knight g7, check, king moves, pawn at, perhaps king takes, bishop g5, king d7, knight at c5 check, king c6. Are there enough pawns? But xuanet didn't sack because he probably was looking at something like what I was trying to look at and decided there wasn't enough attack, so he's played king e2 instead. But he still has no attack, and there's... What happens just on pawn at? Yeah, he's losing the rook by force. And if knight takes, queen takes is already mate. Wow. So it's going to be mate in two anyway. Queen takes bishop back and queen takes f1. Wow. What a game. And here I was thinking this is good for white. But queen g5 was a very good response. Also threatening mass trades on d2. So I wonder what is the correct move here for white. Perhaps castle, but then there's ideas like bishop takes, queen takes, something at h3, maybe even knight at h3. And then he's got two knights in hand. Just coming back to here. Yeah, so this was the moment I was surprised. I said xuanet didn't play queen g4. The other move playable is knight g to e2. And then just fortifying the c3 square. But I think queen g4 is just the main move. And there's nothing wrong with this. Even taking here and knight at h5 straight away is good. Alright, so thanks for watching. It was a short stream. Let's just check out the upcoming matches. I think there is actually a mistake. I'm not sure if I have the ability to edit. But the Metin versus Penguin GIM match is actually on Friday at the same time. So not Thursday. I think it's midnight Thursday night, UTC, which you can see is displayed in Sydney time. So it'll be Friday at 10 AM. So next match coming up is an Aussie Bugzilla playing at 10 PM Sydney time, which is midday Wednesday. So it's in about 5 hours time from now. And I hope to be still up to cover that match. So I noticed, okay, he's been doing a lot of work, very active streaming and commentating. And he's got a match coming up soon against GSVC, Saturday morning Sydney time. But I think his term has started, and so he did say he'll be streaming less, so hopefully myself and maybe Clearcast and anyone else who'd like to join the fold will take over from some of OK's, well, I wouldn't say responsibilities, but it's always nice that someone streams the matches, as many matches as we can, because from round 3 they will start to get very close and very exciting as the ratings get closer and closer together. So next match coming up in about 5 hours. Hope to see you then if you're still around. Otherwise, take care. Have a good rest of the Wednesday, or if you're in USA, I guess your Wednesday is about to begin. So see you soon.